Wanted to take a minute or two to kind of go over something that students have had lots of questions about lately, and that's how to deal with finding a missing dimension if I know something like area. And we'll just start off with this question, which comes from the State Department, the Tennessee Department of Education website from their item sampler. But you can see that the question says David designed a pattern in the shape of a square. The area of this pattern is shown below. And the question is, what's the perimeter of the pattern? Well, if we think about how to find the perimeter of a square, the perimeter of a square is just 4 times the side, because all the sides in a square are going to be the same. So all we would have to do is to multiply 4 times whatever the side length is. But the problem is we don't know the side length. So what we need to do is to use the area of a square to help find the missing side length. And we can do it this way. If I just think about the area of a square is side to the second power, because area is length times width, and in a square it would be the side times this side to find the total area. Well, the problem tells me what the area actually is. The area of this square, this pattern, is 30 and 1/4 inches squared. All I have to do really is just to substitute in the 30 and 1/4 what my area is, and since I'm looking for the side squared, I can use a little algebraic thinking to help figure out what one side is going to be. So just to review, all I've done really is basically substitute the area in for A in my area formula. Now, the next thing we need to do is to try to get S by itself. Not S to the second power, not S anything, just an S by itself. So in order to do that, all we would have to do is to take the square root of S squared, because after we take the square root of S squared, we just get simply S. Now, what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. So what we need to do is to take take the square root of 30 and 1/4 inches square to find out that, excuse me, do some quick calculations here and take the square root of 30 and 1/4 to find out that one side length is 5.5, 5.5 inches, or it can be written as the fraction. So just in review, to get the S by itself, I just took the square root of 30 and 1/4 inches square and the square root of S squared to get S by itself. Now, let's go back up and answer the question. Notice right here that one of the answer choices is 5.5. Okay, and students see that, okay, I've got 5.5 here and it matches something here, but the question is asking what is the perimeter. So what we need to do is to go back up here. You can add 5.5. We can add it 4 times, or we can just simply say 5.5, or sorry, 4 times 5.5 to get the perimeter, which equals 22 inches. So the best answer in this case is letter D, 22 inches. Substitute whatever the area is so I can find one side length, and then substitute the side length to find the rest of the perimeter. A very similar question is like this. A square room has a perimeter of 68 feet. What's the area of the room? And so it's asked just a little bit different. Let's just get a room right here, and we know from this room that the perimeter equals 68 feet. Well, if that's the case, how do I figure out what one side length is? Because remember, we need to find area, we need a side squared. In order to do this, we can do it formula, or we can do it in a very formative way by saying perimeter is 4 times the side, and then we would go ahead and substitute 68 because it tells us what the perimeter is. 68 feet equals 4s, and then use our algebra and divide both sides by 4 to find that one side length is 17 in this case, feet. Okay, now that's one side length. Now, traditionally, what we can do is just say, okay, if the whole perimeter is 68, all I would have to do is divide it by 4 to get 17. Same way, this is just a little bit more formative and more, structured and that kind of thing. Okay, so now all we have to do is to substitute. If I know one side length is 17, all I have to do is to find the total area, is to say 17 squared, which equals 289. Choice G. So whatever information is given, we just substitute it in the correct formula, and typically the formulas are given to students on the TCAP test. So let's look at one other one right here. A cube this time has a surface area of 384 inches square. What is the volume? So we're looking for what is volume. And right here, the volume formula tells us that if it's a cube, that volume is just simply edge to the third power. Well, the problem is we don't know what the edge is because it tells us what surface area is. So I can use this surface area formula to actually find the volume. Surface area equals 6 times E squared. Now, what is it that I know? The information from the problem tells us that the surface area is 384 square inches. I can substitute it in the SA part of the formula and then come over here and just leave everything else the same. So all I did was really substitute 384 for surface area. Now, the next thing we need to do is to find out what one edge is, because I got to figure out what an edge is to find the volume of the total cube. So I'm just going to multiply 6 times E squared is 6E squared, and 384, just going to bring it down. Now I need to get the E squared by itself. In order to do that, we're going to use our algebra and divide both sides by 6. Now what we have left over is E squared. We have to take an additional step, but let's 384 divided by 6, which equals 64. 64 equals edge squared. What we need is one edge, and if you remember just from a few minutes ago, to get the E squared by itself, or just as a while ago we had S squared, all we have to do is to take the square root of both sides to find out that one edge is 8. Now the question is, what's the volume of the cube? Now notice here's 64, and when students work it, here's 64. So we have to be careful to make sure we know what we're looking for. So if I know what edge is, now I can just substitute it for edge in the formula, 8 to the third power, to find that volume, or I'm sorry, 8 raised to the third power is 512, in this case, cubic inches. So I hope this helps. I hope this clears up some misconceptions, and please continue to check the website for other videos. Thank you.